Okay, then we will start now the first presentation, and then to start this workshop I will try first of all to give a general idea about the activities we are running at the university concerning the technological innovation and the way to commercialize our research results. That is the idea of this support center for technological innovation, and this is part of my responsibility here at the university. As I have mentioned before, the context where we were trying to do things is just this kind of knowledge triangle process where Europe is trying to mobilize its forces in three different areas. From one side, higher education, and then part of it is the modernization of the European universities as a part of the so-called European higher education area. That close to that, probably even for people not living in Europe, they will learn something about the Bologna process. That is just to change a lot of things. I don't know if the direction was clear, but at least they were moving a lot of things around that. The same is happening about the creation of the so-called European research area. This is again another mechanism to mobilize all resources in Europe, and then to create to avoid the fragmentation process we have at this moment, and then to move from the 28 member states at this moment, plus the European Commission, in a single process, creating the European research area. And in a more fuzzy way, we had a lot of different things associated to the innovation part. Basically because it was not clear what kind of policies were there. On the other hand, because part of the responsibilities were in hands of the member states or even in the regions of Europe. And then part of the regional strategy and the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, the competitiveness and innovation programs, things like that were created in the last years. And now, I hope, the end of this year, the new Horizon 2020 will be approved, and they will be able to launch a more integrated process. Universities are in the middle, in the sense that the responsibility, the mission of the university could cope with these three things. It's true that for many, historically, and for many universities, still today, the research, the knowledge generation, and also higher education become the basic functions of the university, basic mission of the university. But slowly, these kind of things are also gaining momentum, and probably for a technical university is also becoming one of the important elements. We are a university composed exclusively by architectural engineering schools, and then from our point of view, this is a basic point, because if not, part of the higher education and even the research, applied research, has no sense if they are not connected at the end to the application in the market. This is a context that in the last years were conducted different activities related to the valorization of research, supporting entrepreneurship, promoting patent filing, and to increase also the stable cooperation with the industrial sector by promoting the creation of joint labs or joint centers or these kinds of units that could help a close and stable cooperation in the long term. And nevertheless, the effort on direct exploitation of the research was not considered a basic element of UPM research strategy until probably a couple of years ago. And then we're now moving forward to this process, trying to get a more comprehensive view about the multifunctional view of the mission of the university. Then, coming back to this kind of knowledge triangle, again, from the last one I will see this triangle, but here there were a lot of different programs supporting in the European Union to cope with that, and in the more or less relationship with one of these angles of this triangle. But it's true that we're now trying to move from the strategic point of view. A lot of contract research agreements we have with enterprises at this moment. We're signing every year more than 1,000 specific bilateral contracts with companies, in many cases smaller ones, to a different type of activities, more towards strategic partnerships. And this is not also only a change of words here, it's also a deep, huge change of mentality behind that, because it refers not only to how just and to connect it to one specific company to do something during several months. It's just to have a partnership for the future. And it changed a lot the way that the strategy of the university could be created. Then what is happening? Well, today, probably at the end of the research projects, sometimes results could have no clear commercialization, potential commercialization, and then appear the typical academic valorization in terms of publication, open diffusion, theses, and so on. And that's okay, because we are living in a university, and this is part of our mission in society. But sometimes we have also results with potential commercialization, and then, unfortunately, the system appears, first of all, too late, when practically the project has finished, and not necessarily from the very beginning. That's the first point. The second point is that, okay, sometimes we could recognize that something here could be useful, but that's not difficult. It's not easy to do that. And then in some cases we are improving the protection process, but not necessarily thinking in the commercialization at the end. It's just simply to support even the academic publication after that, and the curriculum vitae of professors involved in this kind of patents. But many of them are not exploited in the market. This is not a problem of this university. It's a common problem everywhere. But that's clear that we need to address it. This is a new possible perspective. And this is part of our strategy today. First of all, is to intercept, in the good sense, this kind of research projects to identify what kind of things could be useful, not at the end, waiting for the finalizing of the project, but even before that, trying to identify what kind of things could be useful here, and then to have, of course, a key decision about that in terms of the analysis of potential commercialization, to have a simple academic valorization, and then as usual, that's okay in many cases, or not. And then to have a commercial valorization that the protection is not isolated, is connected to the commercialization in order to be able to do that in the best way. But to have, for instance, a lot of patent filing at the extension at the international level and to pay money for that without a clear commercialization after that is just a wasting of money. Then we need to be sure that it's important. Even to have, if things are okay, industrial secrets that also are not also patent filing, because in many cases and many domains that is not clear that patent is the best way to address the problem. It depends again on the type of commercialization we like to do after that. Then we are discussing these kind of models, and we need to learn from others about what kind of lessons we can learn from other experiences in other countries, in other places, and then to see if this model could be confronted with other experiences. And part of the mission of the workshop today is just to discuss about that. Then, to support it, we have created last year the Innovatech program for commercialization to support different things. First of all, to support the mentality change towards innovation. We are engineers, and then probably we were living in this kind of things. But one thing is to say that in the education here at the university, we were closer to this kind of things. And another thing is to see that the university as an institution have the units and the support to do that. That's a different story. And then to support the creation of products, licensing or maturation of research projects for integration and demonstration of advanced technologies. I will show something about that in a minute. And then to support the technology, new technology-based firms to exploit the UPM technology assets. One thing is to support the creation of a spin-off to support and to exploit the UPM technology. Another thing is to support entrepreneurship as a general mission in society. And we don't need to confuse both things because they are different. In fact, a program for entrepreneurship is more devoted to create technology-based firms and not only new companies. That's another story. And then for doing that, we have created this program as a catalyzer element here in the middle to be able to connect better with research groups and research centers that we are doing the RTD based on public and private funding for these kinds of activities, isolated or in connection to other partners abroad. And then to be able to see if it's possible to access the market via the creation of a spin-off, or via the commercialization of the technology to other companies, or even, and this is becoming more and more important, the integration of our technology to other technologies and persisting companies, and then to be able to create more complex products or services. And that is the vision we have at this moment, but we need to land this vision in practical terms. But this is the activity we are trying to do. Then in terms of approaches, the creation of technology-based enterprises, it is also very important to promote it in the personnel of the university, not only faculty members, but also researchers, master, doctorate students, because all of them correspond to the research community we have here at the university. The commercialization of technologies or know-how through licenses, in an exclusive way or not, to pre-existing companies, and this is also very important, and to learn how to do that, because there are many ways to address this problem, and in some cases you are also putting barriers for your future activity or not, depending on the way that this licensing process is conducted. And finally, this integration of the UPM technology has mentioned before with external enterprises. To do that, external enterprises are not located here, located everywhere. Then, for that reason, it's necessary to extend our initiative with other partners located everywhere, because this is the only way to be able to address this integration successfully. Then, to do that, the structure of the center is composed by three main pieces. One side, the commercialization of technology. If the technology is ready to be commercialized in terms of a spin-off creation or licensing or sales of technology, but in many cases the technology is not mature enough to start the commercialization process from the very beginning, because at the end, in many cases, the result of a research project is just a prototype, laboratory prototype. This is something different than a proof of concept at the industrial level, and then probably in some cases we need also to mature this technology to be able to start this process. And then even to mature that, probably it should be also useful to receive an early feedback from users. Early feedback from users means that we need also, if possible, to have an integration and demonstration capabilities through living labs, or experience lab, or pilot and demonstrator, etc., to feed up this process, and then to be able to run all these three pieces in a comprehensive way, in an integrated way. Then, at the end, while strategic management with training, internationalization, consulting, etc., to complement all this stuff. This is the structure we are creating, and then to show you what things are moving, what kind of things are moving. This is just the evolution of the patents granted by the Spanish office for intellectual property, and then intellectual property in the international meaning. And then in the last year, we see that we have increased, and more or less we have 50 new patents every year. It's not a huge number, but compared to the situation in many other Spanish universities, or even in Europe, it's not a bad figure. But the problem is not there. The problem is to know what happens with this kind of patents. Roughly speaking, 90 patents of them are internationally extended, but how many of them are now in exploitation? 14% of them. Between 14 and 15, it depends on the years, but more or less. The rest, well, waiting for nothing. And waiting for nothing, just waiting for the protection period, which is finishing, in many cases, or even to exploit it internationally. And this is one of the problems. What happened with the rest? What to do? Of course, the program for spin-off creation received a lot of ideas, 400 this year. Many of them were retained. This is a problem because we cannot manage all of them, because due to the limited human resources for that. Then it's necessary to have a filter out process. In many cases dangerous, because in many cases you need to filter out things that could be useful if you work on them. That's very difficult. Then to arrive to the 60 business plan, 63 at the end, if I remember well the figure. And then at the end is the objective to 20 or 18 or 17, but at the end to have close similar to that. Many of them could be also a mechanism to exploit the technology, because in many cases these companies will be based on the technology created previously at the university through the different research projects. And that's okay. It's a good mechanism. But well, maybe we have 10, 12 cases where we have licensed this kind of technology to those companies. But this is not enough. It's not enough again. This program for spin-off creation has this kind of figures. 15 is the number at the end of October. Then, well, we see what happens at the end of the year. Probably we're more or less on the same figure than the last years. But this is quite stable. In terms of that, the last year, 15, 17, 18, more or less, this is the number of new companies created. But the most important is that the survival rate at the third year of those companies is 80% of them. Probably higher, from my knowledge, with respect to the situation found in other countries. Why? There are several reasons. We can discuss it today. One of them is probably because our filter out process means that we have removed initially a lot of ideas that in many other cases, well, they could continue at the end. Then in this case, probably because the cultural barrier we have to avoid the failures, and then to promote only the success. We only work with things that are more or less sure that they will survive. But we can discuss it. And then this is one of the problems. They have captured 28 million euros from this capital. Too much. Well, compared to the situation in California, probably no. Compared to the situation in Spain, that's okay. But that is the problem. We cannot think in terms of Spain. Spain doesn't exist in the global world as just as simply as a mechanism to reference point. We need to think in other terms. And that's the situation. And then this is the evolution of license contracts and the royalties. And this is also another problem. The royalties received from our activity is very low. Two reasons. First of all, while many contracts were contract research paid through the companies, and then all these kinds of contracts have the clause that the only possible way to exploit the results is through the company. The company will exploit them, not ourselves. We are not receiving royalties. That's okay. Our mentality of applied research in engineering was historically the typical way to work with companies. But the problem is that in many other cases where the owner of the technology is the university, which are, for instance, on the national programs or the European framework program, where the owner is the participant, the partner participating in the project, and we need to increase it. Even in this, at the end, again, this is the figure at the end of October, that probably will finish again 400. It's increasing, but very low compared to the budget of the university. If we compare this figure with the situation, except in some universities, the British universities, in the rest of Europe, the situation is not too different from that. But we need to improve, because it's a problem in Europe, and not a problem only in Spain and only in this university. This is the best figure in the Spanish universities, anyway. Then, what happened with the results? Because to enter into the problems, we need also to see what is happening. This is the levels that the European Commission has developed to see what kind of results are to move to the market, or from the idea to the first commercial system. Usually, the levels that appear at the end of one research project is more or less here. And then we need to address also these kind of things, because if not, it should be very difficult to convince any kind of external investor or company to use the technology created in the university. How to move from these levels in yellow to this level in blue, that is not easy, because it refers to many different types of investments, many different types of facilities, and also mentality. But we need to work there. Then, for this reason, we are now trying to implement a mechanism that for identified UPM technologies created in research projects, to be able to mature them, to arrive to other kinds of things more mature, to be able to start the commercialization process. And to do this kind of projects, not RTD projects, but maturation projects, with a lot of activities to be able to identify the market, the type of results, the pre-commercialization business plans, and so on, and to do that only for us, and if possible, in a cooperative development with other interested groups. And this is part of our strategy. Then, in this case, we are now putting all pieces, working together in this kind of DAISY model, trying to do the education and entrepreneurship programs, thinking on that, the program for spin-off creation, the pre-incubator of ideas, the business center, the experience and living labs, the technology watch and consulting service, technology commercialization program, there's also the role of the international advisory boards, all together with the set of aggregated entities, trying to mobilize all possible forces and approaches in this mechanism. This is part of our goal. This is part of the context of this workshop, because at the end, to do that, we need also to learn from others. Then I conclude. The UPM strategy for exploitation and commercialization results corresponds to an institutional vision of the UPM role in the knowledge triangle context. Well, magic word. But behind this sentence is just the clear commitment that we need to do that step by step. Step by step, learning from the experience, learning from the failures, and not only from the successes, and then it will take time. But we need to have not too much time, because we haven't. And to do that, we need to have partnerships with them. We are fully convinced that to move them, we need to do that with national and international partners, because only learning from others is possible to accelerate, to speed up this process. And there's this center and these two programs, Innovatech and acto UPM, are the tools we have created for that, and we need to consolidate them, and we need your support, we need your experience, we need your feedback to be able to move forward in this process. Thank you.